Hi guys, and welcome to today's episode of the vlog series. Two of our most popular vlogs on YouTube have been around writing CVs and how to write the perfect medical CV. So that's exactly what we're going to talk to you about today. We're going to bring together the two vlogs that are already out there and put them together for one perfect series on how to create the perfect medical CV for NHS applications. Okay, so the very first section of your CV, the cover sheet, should really be all about you. So the very top section is going to be personal details, and we're going to put a snippet up just now from the template CV that we use at BDI Resourcing. If you'd like a copy of this, please email us across to apply@bdiresourcing.com and we'll send you a copy back. And here you can see the full version of the CV template that we use. Obviously really well formatted, all very, very clear, and all of the major sections that we're going to talk through in the rest of the video. If you do want to receive a copy of this, as we said, please just email through to apply@bdiresourcing.com. You can always email it back to us and we'll give you any top tips. Important to note here that the main details are really just your personal contact details, so your name, your email address, your street address and your telephone number. There's nothing else needs to be included at this stage. And for international doctors, it is often customary to put a photograph at the top of your CV, your religious details, your marital status, your nationality, any of those things. In the UK, they're not really considered relevant to job applications, so your CV should be judged on its merit alone, so your experience and your motivations and that kind of thing. So don't include any of those things on the top of your CV. Keep it to the very basics that you can see in the section on the screen just now. Okay, so the next section down from your personal details is a professional summary. And this is really a snapshot of, are you equipped to do the job that the employer are looking for you to do? So we're talking qualifications here. It can be quite a factual section of your CV. Make sure to include it in reverse chronological order. Start with your GMC registration. That is the most imperative thing, particularly if you're coming in as an international doctor. The NHS love to know that you hold that GMC registration straight away. Secondary to that, put your international professional registrations as well. So if you're registered with a medical board in India, for example, make sure you put that down secondary. And then next up, put the qualification route that you use to get your entry to the GMC. So whether you came through PLAB or whether you came through one of the Royal College routes or another recognised postgraduate qualification, or perhaps even CSER. Also important, just below that, to put down your OET or IELTS or whichever route you came through for your English language testing as well. That may seem like a bit of overkill given that you've written that you've got your GMC, but it's actually really important because much as GMC infers that yes, you got that, it's just highlighting the fact that you've got a really high level of English, and as an international doctor that's a reassurance to an NHS employer, so it's really important to get that noted down there. Follow-up points right at the bottom of this section are going to be any other recognised postgraduate qualifications, so perhaps those that aren't recognised by the GMC, but if you've done a recognised training route in your home country, for example, DMB in India, and then any others, any life support courses or things like safeguarding children if you're a paediatrician, anything along those lines really. Include it all, put it in a logical order, reverse chronological ideally, put the date that you achieved it, the body that it's been sent from, and then your status as well. So it may be 2021 GMC registered with the number and license to practice written on there. Keep it in that nice format so that it's very, very clear when your CV reaches that clinician's inbox exactly what you can do. Okay, so the third and final section that we're going to put up on the screen just now is a personal summary and career objectives. This is the first kind of paragraph section of your CV, and it's really your opportunity to lure in the consultant that's reading your CV and get them to continue reading on to the second, third, fourth and fifth pages where you talk more about the nitty-gritty details about your experiences. So 2 paragraphs that are essential here. The first one is all about an overview of your experiences to date. So where are you working right now? What's your grade, your position, your title? What kind of hospital are you working in? What are you specialising in? Just a brief overview of your experience to date. Doesn't need to go into depth or detail. You're going to do that later on, but you're just looking to highlight the main points. The second paragraph, and this is vitally important, is an opportunity for you to sell yourself and to sell your motivations for working in the NHS. So it might be that you want to talk about your career objectives, where you are right now, and that you're looking to become a consultant in the future or progress into a niche specialism or something along those lines. Or it might be your specific motivations to get into the NHS and to get into that particular hospital. So that's your real opportunity to sell yourself, to sell your background, your experience, and your career objectives and where you're looking to head. If you get that bit right, the consultants will continue reading on to the next section. So we're going to put an example up on the screen just now, which we think is a really, really helpful guide for you. So this doctor, if we have a read through, they've given a good overview of their experience. So they've gone into their postgraduate qualification first of all, MRCP certified physician with an immense interest in medicine. A very descriptive word there, immense interest. They've given their reasons for choosing it, so they've talked about their motivations, their passion in there. I think that's super important that you get that to come across. They've then gone on to talk about their career objective, which to an NHS employer is going to be so important, and particularly mentioning that they want to work in a subspeciality field, which again is just what the NHS want to hear because it's a very subspecialised healthcare system. A good overview, 6 years experience, registrar leading the shift. There's some excellent wording there that I think will just lure people into the next page of this person's CV. And this was a really successful CV. This person secured a role very quickly in the NHS. Also important to note the final bullet point that they've included, a strong leader who works well under pressure. That's a more personal trait than the qualifications, but also vitally important as it tells you a lot about this person as an individual. Okay, so the next section is competencies, procedures and clinical skills. We particularly recommend inserting this section at this stage if you're an international doctor. If you're a UK-based doctor and you've completed your FY1, FY2, CT1, 2, ST training, whatever, there's an assumed level of competency for each of those. So your career history will probably tell an employer exactly what they need to know. If you've completed those, you've got those competencies. For an international candidate, however, it's going to be a lot less clear as to what you've actually done and what you do regularly and what you don't. So important to know any specifics. The example we're putting up on the screen just now is quite med specific. However, this is going to be completely different for every single specialism. For example, if you're a radiologist, you might want to put your logbook of all of the screen reports that you report on. If you're a gastroenterologist, you might want to put your cecal intubation rate, number of endoscopies and colonoscopies every year, whatever it might be. The more senior you are, probably the more relevant those things will be. Really important tip at this stage is to detail even the more junior competencies, even if you think that they're assumed or more irrelevant. So cannula insertion, for example, is something that a junior doctor would do in the NHS. Internationally, the more senior you get, the less likely you are to be doing it. So you might actually feel that you need to be assisted in doing that now. Be completely honest about that. It helps an employer identify exactly where the skills gaps might be and what they need to train you on when you join the NHS. Okay, so the next section, and arguably the most important section, is your employment history. Start with your most recent employer and work backwards from there in chronological order. Don't do it in the reverse way, which is obviously to start with your degree and then work all the way forwards. The most important thing here, and particularly with your most recent employer, that's where you want the most detail, is that you need, if you're an international doctor, you need to exemplify how your role is similar to the role and how it differs from the role that you're applying for in the NHS. So to start with, if you were to just put, I am a medical resident working in Oman, that would not be sufficient. You need to put the detail. So start with the detail of the hospital. How big is it? How many beds is it? How many patients is it? What type of hospital is it? Then go on to the department itself. How many patients do you see on a daily basis? What's the on-call frequency in your rota? What's the demographic of the patients that are coming into your hospital? Are they elderly? Are they young? All these things paint a picture of the type of role and the type of setting that you're used to working in, and that's vitally important for someone who's coming into the NHS for the first time, so that a prospective employer can say, okay, this person should get on just fine in my type of hospital as well. We're going to put an example up on the screen just now, and this example is from someone who was successful in securing a role in A&E. So as you can see from the very beginning, they've gone in with saying they were a medical officer in adult and accident and emergency, but they've also bracketed the fact that that's equivalent to UK registrar. I think that's something important to do if you can, is to let the employer know where the equivalent grade is in the NHS. They start by talking about the size of the hospital, how many beds, where they're particularly based, so which ward, how many beds in that ward itself, how many patients they see per day, the type of patients that they're seeing and the type of things that they're treating. They go on to talk about their specific roles and responsibilities within that. All sorts of other parts as well, talking about right to the very end there, guiding students and interns, assisting junior doctors, abiding by local policies, procedures, ethical standards and laws. All those things vitally important in painting a really good picture of what this doctor is doing in their current role. It would be very, very easy for an NHS doctor to look at that and say, okay, here are the similarities and differences in the type of role that this doctor's doing, and how could I see them fitting into my department? Okay, so the next section is previous employment. This is going to be very much the same as your current employment, and you should address it in much the same way. However, take note, if you have been in your current employment for 1 year, you're probably going to want to put lots and lots of detail in your second and third employments. If you've been in the same employment for 10 years, you probably don't need to put as much detail into the previous employers. If you're a more junior doctor and your internship was done in the last 3 to 5 years, you'll probably want to go into a bit more detail about the rotations that you actually did, particularly if you're coming in at the more junior level. It's going to be a bit more important to learn about what you did in those rotations, which departments you rotated in, what core and foundation equivalent competencies you gained in those roles, so you can paint a good picture of your junior skills as well. So yeah, make sure you take notes and include those details. Okay, so the final details that you'll need to include in a really good medical CV. First and foremost, courses and conferences you've attended. These are really important because they can tell an employer a lot about your specialist interests and what you're really, really passionate about. If you've been a speaker, an attendee, a lecturer, a host, any of those things, detail these down. Reverse chronological order as always. Research and publications, also incredibly important. If you're more junior in your career, perhaps you won't have too many of these. If you're more senior or you've worked in a more academic role, then you might have lots of these to include. And again, they're a really good reference point for employers to jump off and have a look at what you've achieved in those. If you've got any other awards and accreditations, put these in right at the end. And if there's any other skills or things you're passionate about, personal interests even, add these in right at the very end. Don't dwell on these too much, they're not going to add too much value to your CV, but they do give a bit of personality and it's a good reference point for prospective employers. Final point to note is about references. References need to cover 3 years of work history. So it may be that you have one reference if you've worked in the same place for 3 years. If you've had 3 different employers during that time, you're going to need to provide one for each. Should be a clinician who's more senior than you, and we do have reference templates if you need those in getting your references. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the vlog series. There's an accompanying set of vlogs and a couple of extra vlogs on the YouTube channel as well. And if you would like a copy of the CV that we've been referencing throughout this video, then send us an email to apply@bdiresourcing.com. We'll put the contact details up at the very end of the video.